When we think of water in its natural state, we often imagine it to be pristine and ready to drink. However, that's rarely the case. As water moves across the environment, it picks up contaminants. Trillions of microscopic organisms inhabit planet Earth in the air, the soil, and the water. Among them are organisms that cause disease, called pathogens. Microscopic pathogens found in natural water sources can compromise water quality, making it unsafe to drink. These microbes exist in many forms: helminths or worms, amoebic and protozoan cysts, some of which form dormant cysts, viruses, and bacterial cells, and they may be the result of human or animal waste, like the bacterium E. coli. Most waterborne pathogens are associated with nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. The World Health Organization estimates that 6,000 children die every day from microbially contaminated water, primarily in developing countries where microbial contamination of water is common. Their presence in potable drinking water, sometimes in even very small quantities, may result in the outbreak of waterborne disease. Children, older adults, and people with compromised immune systems are at the highest risk from waterborne disease. Waterborne diseases include cholera, cryptosporidiosis, dysentery, gastroenteritis, giardias, hepatitis, legionellosis or Legionnaire's disease, and typhoid. Milwaukee, site of the largest outbreak of waterborne disease on U.S. record. The cause? Cryptosporidium. Cryptosporidium had overwhelmed a major city's treatment system. The results were alarming. 400,000 taken ill, and over 100 reported deaths. The system established to protect the public's health and operating within state and federal standards in place at that time failed to protect the consumer from exposure to pathogens. A water supply operator's worst fear realized. Walkerton. During heavy rains, runoff contaminated by animal waste passed through cracks in the permeable bedrock surrounding well number 5, allowing the influx of pathogenic E. coli into the drinking water system. The contamination passed directly into the town's distribution system. More than half of the population fell ill. 7 did not recover. Records indicated a chlorine residual, but those records were falsified. Coliform samples had been altered before being submitted for analysis. The water had not been disinfected. The entire distribution system had to be disinfected and tested at every tap. The investigation into what went wrong and the published findings resulted in major revisions in water regulations throughout Canada. These are hard lessons learned, and at the greatest expense: human life. Making sure every home, school, and community receives clean, safe drinking water is a water supply operator's greatest responsibility. There is no way to routinely test for every possible pathogen that could be in water. Therefore, the focus is on making sure that the multiple barriers are in place and operating properly. The U.S. Federal Surface Water Treatment Rule requires multiple methods of treatment to ensure removal and/or inactivation of possible pathogenic organisms that threaten public health. For surface water systems, this generally means filtration plus disinfection. Disinfection is the term used to describe the treatment process used to destroy or inactivate disease-causing organisms. Sterilization is the eradication of all life forms. Water is not sterilized, it is disinfected, made safe to drink. Primary disinfection during water treatment is designed to kill harmful microorganisms before the water enters the distribution system. In addition, a disinfectant residual can be applied to the water that will be entering the distribution system to deter the growth of microorganisms and to protect against contamination in the system. This secondary disinfection refers to the addition of the disinfectant before the first customer and is applied to maintain a chlorine or chloramine residual throughout the distribution system. Sometimes a single dose serves for both primary and secondary disinfection. Drinking water utilities rely on the multiple barrier concept to ensure safe water. That includes source water protection, filtration, disinfection, maintenance of the distribution system infrastructure such as backflow prevention and secured storage, and operator competence. This video will focus on disinfection. There are multiple ways to disinfect water. These include heat treatment, as in boiling, ultraviolet radiation or UV, and chemical treatment such as chlorine. Boiling water on a large scale is economically impractical and may concentrate unwanted inorganic or chemical contaminants such as lead and nitrate. Historically, most utilities have and still use chlorine for primary disinfection. More recently, many are adding alternative technologies like ultraviolet light. UV can inactivate many microbial pathogens, particularly Cryptosporidium, which cannot be killed with reasonable chlorine doses. There are several key factors a treatment operator should consider. How effective is the disinfectant in reducing and inactivating or destroying microorganisms? Does the disinfectant provide the required concentration for the distribution system? What types of disinfection byproducts are produced, and do they pose a regulatory concern, either now or in the future? And does the disinfectant provide any secondary benefits such as controlling taste and odor? Does it aid in the flocculation process or removal of color? What about reducing organic compounds? Is a single type of disinfection best for your system, or might a multiple disinfection strategy work best? Understanding the answers to these questions will help identify which disinfection strategy is right for you. And there are many alternative applications to be considered. Ultraviolet light, or UV, is the newest of the generally accepted disinfection strategies. UV inactivates microorganisms by irradiating them with ultraviolet light, thus disrupting the metabolic activity and reproductive process of the organism, rendering them inactive or incapable of reproduction. Particulate matter, or turbidity, interferes with UV light, thus lowering the amount available for inactivating pathogens. Therefore, UV is usually recommended for use after water has been filtered. UV disinfection inactivates certain kinds of organisms that are difficult to kill using other disinfectants. UV is considered effective against Cryptosporidium and Giardia, but is less effective against some viruses and more resistant spores. Like other disinfection strategies, UV has its disadvantages. Natural organic and inorganic matter may foul the lamps and decrease performance. While UV light produces minimal or no disinfection byproducts, it does not provide a disinfection residual. Therefore, chlorine or chloramine must be added to achieve a residual before the water leaves the plant and enters the distribution system. The most commonly used methods for disinfecting water are chemical treatments. Chemical disinfectants often used for treatment include chlorine, chloramine, chlorine dioxide, and ozone. The chemical chlorine has been used for many years as a disinfectant and oxidizing agent. When chlorine compounds dissolve in water, they are hydrolyzed immediately into hypochlorous acid and hydrochloric acid. Hypochlorous acid is a weak acid and consequently ionizes in water to a hydrogen ion and hypochlorite ion. The combination of hypochlorous acid and hypochlorite ion make up the free available chlorine, with the acid form being the stronger disinfectant and oxidant. Chlorine is also available commercially as a sodium hypochlorite solution, solid calcium hypochlorite, or as gaseous chlorine under pressure. Chlorine's success in controlling disease by inactivating most pathogens and its ease of use has made it the disinfectant of choice for many systems. The biggest advantage? A proven track record. The first recognized use of chlorine for water treatment was in 1897 in Maidstone, England. The first continuous use in the U.S. was 1908 in Boonton, New Jersey. A year later, liquid chlorine or chlorine gas became commercially available. Fast forward to the mid-1960s, and more than 10,000 treatment facilities were using chlorine. 85% of large systems and almost all small systems use some form of chlorine. Chlorine and other disinfectants are only effective if the chemical remains in contact with the organisms long enough to kill or inactivate them. The effectiveness of chlorination depends primarily on two factors: the disinfectant concentration, C, and the contact time, T. These are combined as CT values that guide the level of disinfection needed for a particular pathogen. If the chlorine concentration is lowered, then the contact time needs to be increased, and vice versa, in order to maintain the disinfection properties associated with the required CT value for a particular pathogen. The CT is based on the chlorine residual at the point of measurement and contact time prior to the point of measurement. Required CT values to maintain adequate disinfection will vary depending on the water's temperature and pH. Although chlorine remains more stable and forms less disinfection byproducts in cold water, colder temperatures reduce its disinfectant power. Source water quality must also be considered. Turbid water can protect pathogens from disinfection. Some pathogens are resistant to chlorine. For example, chlorine will inactivate Giardia, but Cryptosporidium is not inactivated by chlorine under any reasonable dosages. Removal of Cryptosporidium is accomplished by filtration and disinfection. While chlorine disinfection provides many benefits, it's the main culprit in forming a wide variety of unwanted byproducts. The presence of chlorine may impart flavor or odor to water that some customers find objectionable. Chlorine, when combined with raw or incompletely filtered water, reacts with compounds, usually organic, to produce disinfection byproducts. In the 1970s, researchers discovered that some disinfection byproducts create health risks. Trihalomethanes, or THMs, for example, have been identified as potentially carcinogenic by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Today, haloacetic acids, or HAAs, are also regulated. There are over 600 known disinfection byproducts. The effects and impact of DBPs are still being studied. Meanwhile, minimizing THMs and HAAs will likely minimize other byproducts as well. This and other emerging issues led to the creation of the U.S. Safe Drinking Water Act in 1974 and its reauthorization in 1986 and 1996. The Safe Drinking Water Act recognizes that a balancing act has to be maintained. The disinfection of water is essential for preventing waterborne diseases and has been responsible for saving many lives since its use in water treatment began. Yet, disinfection byproducts have to be minimized too. Water utilities today continue to take on this challenging task of balancing the priorities. Chlorine has a number of secondary benefits as well. When used correctly, it can help control some taste and odor problems, as well as the growth of algae and slime. It oxidizes iron, manganese, and hydrogen sulfide. The use of chlorine as a disinfectant residual for the distribution system is important as it preserves a level of protection throughout the entire water system, starting at the plant where it's added. Utilities are required to maintain a measurable residual throughout the entire system, from plant to tap. The use and storage of chlorine is not without problems due to its innate toxicity. Utilities, especially those adjacent to densely populated areas, are reconsidering their use of chlorine gas due to the potential damage from accident or sabotage. Security and containment are being practiced at all utilities. Safety training and procedures for working with chlorine and chlorine cylinders are for the most part standardized. Regardless, it remains the most widely used disinfectant for drinking water treatment. Next is chloramine, also called combined chlorine. Chloramine is typically created by addition of ammonia to free chlorine already present in water. Like chlorine, chloramine has a proven track record. The process was introduced in 1916 and 1917 in utilities in Ottawa, Canada, and Denver, Colorado. Operators add ammonia and chlorine to form monochloramine, or simply termed chloramine. While not a highly effective primary disinfectant, Chloramine is an effective secondary disinfectant for maintenance of a residual in the distribution system. Chloramine has a lower odor threshold than chlorine, meaning higher concentrations can be used before customers notice its odor. Because chloramine provides a more persistent residual in the distribution system, a utility that may not have been able to maintain a free chlorine residual in the ends of the system is more likely to measure that residual after a switch to chloramine. Disinfectants can be bactericidal, that is, they kill microorganisms, or bacteriostatic, that is, they deter the growth of microorganisms. Refrigeration is bacteriostatic. Chloramine is useful as a bacteriostat agent and may be better at hindering biofilm growth. Another advantage of using chloramine is that it produces fewer disinfection byproducts, such as THMs, when compared to chlorine. With recent concerns over the health effects associated with disinfection byproducts, this particular characteristic has become increasingly important. A disadvantage of chloramine is when the combined chloramine molecule breaks apart or decomposes, releasing free ammonia into the water. The free ammonia then serves as an energy source for bacteria, which converts the ammonia to nitrite. When nitrite is available in the distribution system, it accelerates the breakdown of chloramine, thus releasing more free ammonia. The downward spiral continues until bacterial growth explodes, sometimes producing total coliform positives in the distribution system. Good operational practices are essential for preventing nitrification, maintaining distribution integrity, and providing high-quality drinking water to customers. As a weak oxidant, chloramine is not effective in oxidizing iron, manganese, sulfide, tastes, odors, and color. Typical concentrations of chloramine have not been effective against Cryptosporidium or Giardia. Chlorine dioxide is created by the reaction of chlorine and sodium chlorite, producing a reactive gas. Chlorine dioxide is a strong oxidizing agent that is highly effective in oxidizing iron, manganese, and color problems, along with some taste and odor problems. Chlorine dioxide is effective against bacteria and viruses. It does have some effect on Cryptosporidium, and it will kill Giardia, depending on concentration and the amount of contact time. Chlorine dioxide's major benefit is the lack of reaction with organic matter to form disinfection byproducts. However, another regulated byproduct, chlorate, is associated with chlorine dioxide. So, chlorine dioxide can be used in combination with other treatment processes and other disinfectants. Historically, chlorine dioxide has been more popular in European treatment facilities than in North America. There are minor disadvantages. For instance, chlorine dioxide needs to be generated on-site. At high concentrations, the chemical is explosive. Therefore, it is generally kept at low concentrations rather than be transported. While it is relatively easy to add to water, it is expensive to produce due to the high cost of its major ingredient, sodium chloride. The chlorine dioxide generation process must be carefully controlled as well. The overuse of chlorine gas to produce chlorine dioxide may result in excess free chlorine. And while chlorine dioxide has been somewhat effective in killing Giardia, it may not completely inactivate other harmful organisms such as Cryptosporidium, and a disinfectant residual is still needed for the distribution system. A disinfectant that gained much popularity with water utilities in the 1980s and 90s is the powerful oxidizing agent ozone. Ozone occurs naturally, for example, in a lightning storm. Ozone has a distinct odor, but it is not stable in the lower atmosphere. Ozone is 3 molecules of oxygen. It is produced by passing air containing oxygen over an electrical discharge. When produced for drinking water treatment, ozone is bubbled through the water. Ozone is considered one of the most powerful oxidants and disinfectants available for drinking water treatment. Ozone was first used as a disinfectant in the Netherlands in 1893 and has been used extensively in treatment facilities in Europe ever since. In the United States, ozone was first used to control taste and odor in 1906 at a facility in New York City. Due to its costs and the advantages of chlorine recognized around the same time, very few utilities made it a part of their treatment process. The use of ozone gained popularity due to its effectiveness in killing and deactivating pathogens while not introducing chlorination byproducts. A powerful oxidant, ozone helps control color, taste, and odor. It is typically applied in the treatment plant at the beginning of all the processes or after sedimentation. And it can be enhanced with hydrogen peroxide to provide even stronger oxidant capabilities, or followed by biologically activated filtration to reduce DBP precursors. Another advantage of ozone as a primary disinfectant is that it can serve as a microcoagulant, assisting in the pre-treatment processes. As far as disadvantages, ozone has to be produced in a generator on site. It is chemically fragile but requires an ozone destruct system and monitors to ensure that there are no releases to the atmosphere. In addition, ozone can only be used as a primary disinfectant and not as a residual in the distribution system, since it does not have residual properties. Ozone is highly corrosive, and the proper construction materials must be used in plants treating water with ozone. Proper health and safety precautions are needed also, which is true of all chemical oxidants. Ozone produces different byproducts than chlorine or chlorine dioxide, and there are concerns about the byproducts it does produce. Ozone reacts with bromide in raw water to create bromate, which has been identified as a potential health concern by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which sets the limit for bromate at 10 micrograms per liter. Ozone breaks down organic contaminants into smaller, biodegradable matter. This can be an advantage, provided it is used before filtration, and a disadvantage if used later in the process, as it will create organic food that will encourage biofilm growth in the clear well or distribution system. A number of disinfectants are used for water treatment, and each has its own advantages and disadvantages. But disinfected water is essential over microbially contaminated water. The advantages for using chlorine are that it is a strong oxidant, simple for operators to use, maintains a persistent residual in the distribution system, and a long history of reliable performance. The use of chlorine is not without problems. Chlorinated byproducts, for example. People often do not prefer drinking water that has a chlorine flavor, and the use of chlorine gas can be considered hazardous and must be fully contained. Chloramine's advantages include little or no trihalomethane creation. It's simple to use, has a persistent residual, may better control biofilm, and has a proven history. Unfortunately, chloramine is a weak oxidant and can still cause some total organic halide formation. Chloramine is often associated with biological nitrification in distribution systems, which has its own concerns. Ozone is a strong oxidant that creates little or no trihalomethanes or total organic halide. No taste and odor problems are usually created, and many can be alleviated. While some byproducts are created, they are biodegradable, and ozone aids in the coagulation process. Ozone has a very short half-life, cannot be stored, and must be generated on-site and does not provide a residual for the distribution system. The generation and feeding is fairly complex and expensive, and because of the nature of ozone, special non-corrosive materials need to be used. Chlorine dioxide is a strong oxidant. There is little or no THM formation. It can be effective in controlling certain odor problems. Disadvantages include total organic halide formation along with chlorate and chlorite byproducts. On-site generation is required, and it leaves no residual disinfectant for the distribution system. Finally, ultraviolet radiation. Remember, UV is a disruptive light energy process and not a chemical treatment. UV acts as a strong disinfectant with little or no formation of disinfection byproducts. There are literally no taste and odor problems as a result of its use, and with enhanced procedures, it can be effective against certain odor problems. UV is an energy-intensive process when delivered on-site that creates no persistent residual in the distribution system. This requires UV to be augmented with a chlorine disinfectant. Water treatment operators have goals for every gallon of potable water they produce. Among the multiple barriers that protect drinking water, disinfection has been and continues to be a very important barrier, and it comes with a need to balance two goals. The first goal is to provide a quality that doesn't carry any pathogenic organisms. The second goal is to minimize the production of disinfection byproducts. If the operator is maintaining and operating their disinfection system properly, they can be assured they're delivering a product to their customers that is safe from pathogens. But operators need to remain vigilant on changes in source water quality. The barriers in the treatment process train have a defined strength and are only partially effective if challenged above those limits. New and changing technologies, as well as updated research into the effectiveness and possible health consequences of the various disinfectants, will make selecting and operating disinfection processes one of the most challenging and critical issues facing water providers today and tomorrow.